One language, two countries. एक ही भाषा बोलने वाले कई लोग, बीच में एक रेखा, एक सीमा। उस रेखा का क्या असर पड़ा है उस भाषा के उपयोग पर? कैसे बदली है वो भाषा दो अलग अलग मुल्कों में? आइए समझते हैं अपने अगले सत्र भाषा एक देश दो में। Please welcome Fakrul Alam. He is an academic, a literary critic, essayist, and editor as well as a translator from Bengali. 2012 में सार्क लिटरेचर पुरस्कार और 2013 में बांग्ला अकादमी पुरस्कार से उन्हें सम्मानित किया जा चुका है। Syed Shamsul Haq is a poet, playwright, and novelist from Bangladesh. A fellow of Bangla Academy and the chief advisor of Bangladesh National Council of Poetry, Syed Haq has books over 200 to his credit. He has also been awarded the two highest national awards of Bangladesh. Please join me in extending him a very, very warm welcome. सुबोध सरकार ने 27 किताबें बांग्ला में और 2 किताबें अंग्रेजी में लिखी हैं. At present, he is the editor of भाषानगर, a literary magazine to celebrate Indian literature. 2013 में इन्हें साहित्य अकादमी पुरस्कार से सम्मानित किया गया. Koushiki Dasgupta. Her first published book is Minor Political Parties and the Language of Politics in Late Colonial Bengal. She is currently working on a project titled Beauty, Body and Media. She will be the moderator for this session.
It's time for Bangla now. The session is titled as One Language, Two Countries. Bangla is the language of Bangladesh and the language of India. Especially, Bangla is spoken in West Bengal, in southern part of Assam, Tripura, and this is the second official language of Jharkhand since 2009. Bangla has been ranked 5th in the world and up to 220 million native and 250 million total speakers, according to the current statistics. Not a matter of joke, friends, is the 5th ranking language in the world. Now, this language binds together two culturally diverse regions, West Bengal and Bangladesh. This language, it was divided different times in history. Now today we have 3 speakers with us. Professor Fakrul Alam, Subodh Sarkar, and Syed Shamsul Haq. I'm not introducing them here again. As it is said that there is 2 Bengals, Opar Bangla or Dui Bangla. But what I have found from Syed Shamsul Haq, he said it's only 1 Bengal, not Dui Bangla. It's a feeling, it's a anubhav. I want to hear from Syed Shamsul Haq what he thinks. So,
thank you, Koushiki. I have been eagerly waiting these 3 days to be on the days this evening. These 3 days were very exciting and I was enriched by most of the sessions. And I thank Samanvay and the India Habitat Center for inviting me to this Bhasha Mahotsav. In the previous session, Suraviji ji was saying that in Bhojpuri, there is a type of folk song sung by male, but the theme is women's sorrow. And she said, Ajeeb sa lagta hai. In Bangladesh, the district I was born into, and just across the border in Kuch Bihar, there is a tradition of folk song, a great tradition called Bhavaiya. And the main theme of Bhavaiya song is women's sorrow, but it is mostly, almost invariably sung by men. So when I'm saying this and thinking about it, I was thinking that Kuch Bihar and my district Rangpur of Bangladesh is close to each other. During British days, we were subject of Maharaja of Kuch Bihar. We spoke the same language, the dialect of North Bengal. Now, she mentioned about my strong feeling that Bangla is one. There is no Idhar Bangla, Udhar Bangla, Epar Bangla, Opar Bangla, or Tripura for that matter, or Barak Upattaka of Assam region, or Eastern region. Bangla is one. It is a long-lived memory, a very deep, emotional thing. As I say it in Bangla, I do not find any equivalent English word for it. Anubhav is a much deeper and wider word. Anubhav. But the country is two. Now you see, India and Bangladesh, we have about, you won't believe this, about 4,000 kilometers of border, contiguous, right from the Bay of Bengal in the west, and it goes up and up and up and up, and down, 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 up to Agartala and Mizoram and other states. It's a very porous border. You hear about smugglers operating freely, immigrants pouring into India from Bangladesh. But you don't hear about culture is also flowing. Newspapers never mentions that there is a flow of culture. It's actually one culture. The sky is not divided. Land may be divided. I remember during 1947 when I was 13-year-old, the river that I was born on the bank of, this river was awarded to India. And 3 days later, it came back to the eastern wing of Pakistan. And 8 days later, it was again, identified as an Indian river. And then it came back to us. Now you see, that is the kind of artificial border we have. We speak the same language. We have the same language, and we inherited this language for many hundreds of years, thousands of years. In one of my poems, I said that আমি তো এসেছি চর্যাপদের অক্ষরগুলো থেকে, which is more than 1,000-year-old. The same tradition we have. Tagore is not only our national anthem, we sing his song. Tagore inspired us to find ourselves. He was a mirror for us. In 1961, when Pakistan banned Rabindranath's song in Pakistan, Bengalis protested, and we sang on the streets Tagore's songs. Jibanananda, his pastoral poem, great pastoral poem, Beautiful Bangla, Ruposhi Bangla. Banglar mukh ami dekhiyachi. This line was coined by Bangladeshis, Bengalis in Bangladesh as a war cry. Banglar mukh ami dekhiyachi. I have seen the vices of Bangla.
But pastorality is absolutely different.
But now, when we look at literature written in West Bengal or Tripura or in the Borak, I must not exclude them when we are talking about one language, two countries, these areas, and the literature that's being written in Bangladesh, they have got some different identity. How is that? A literature is based on people's unique economic, social, and political experience. One mustn't forget that in Bangladesh in 1952, I will just name some of the highlights of history. People were killed for the love of their language. They shed their blood. The Language Martyrs' Day of 21st February in 1952. In 1958, martial law was imposed in Dedan, Pakistan, and we belonged to the eastern wing of Pakistan at the time. We went through a very inhuman, that's the mildest word I can use, inhuman military dictatorship for decades. In 1971, there was a genocide unleashed on us. We fought a war of independence and we won the war. And I mustn't forget the role India played to achieve our independence. And I salute the Indians and the Indian government of the time, especially Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the valiant forces of Indian armed forces. I salute them. In Bangladesh, we are deeply grateful to them. Now you see, this experience, dying for language, living a life under a general's boot, genocide, and armed struggle to gain independence. This has given a unique or a different face of our literature written in Bangla. And there we have a different body of literature written in the same language. You see, literature written in a language, when we talk about one language and English, you see, English
many countries.
is the language of literature in Great Britain, United States, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and of course in India these days. But when we look at Bangla, we are looking at a situation when the two countries we are talking about are absolutely back to back. Unlike Great Britain and United States, Great Britain and Canada, or Great Britain and New Zealand. So that is the premise I have given to Koushiki when she was in touch with me. What is my feelings about it? Bangla is one, country may be two, and we should look at the literature that we are producing in Bangladesh, and my friend Subodh, my great friend poet Subodh, and others in Kolkata or in Tripura or in Borak Upattaka they are writing. We are people of the same language. The literature should be called Bangla literature with an additional word that Bangla literature Bangladesh, Bangla literature India. That's how I would like to see the whole thing. And incidentally, I liked the inaugural speech of poet Ashok Bajpai, who said that in a time when lies prevail and terrorism is about, literature is perhaps the last bastion of truth and values. And this truth and values, both in India and in Bangladesh, we uphold in our literature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we are one. This is one language and two countries. But still, we have to acknowledge one fact, that there are linguistic and literary divergences. So I'd like to hear from Fakrul Alam. What do you think? Is it one language? But why there is linguistic and literary divergences between these two regions, starting from the first partition of Bengal in 1945?
Haq Bhai, Syed Shamsul Haq, gave you one narrative and I have another one. And it's a completely different narrative, I think. Because I think it starts with 1905. We were thrice partitioned. And I would say that it started at a point when for the first time, even though that partition was so short-lived, we began to think in our part of Bengal of the possibilities of having something that would be quite distinct, I think. It didn't really flower at all. But in 1921, the University of Dhaka, where I teach, was established. And the University of Dhaka produced a generation which from the 1940s, late 1940s, began to change the literature and began to establish itself. I mean, before that period, before 47, before Pakistan, the real partition, I would say that the center of writing was Kolkata, and everybody gravitated towards Kolkata. Jivananda Das, whom he mentioned, Buddha Bose, everybody who wanted to be somebody moved to Calcutta. And Calcutta, Kolkata, intentionally, unintentionally, had a kind of an hegemonic influence.
Right.
And I think that hegemonic influence continued. 1952, the 21st of February, which is our National Language Day, is absolutely crucial, I think, to our identity formation. And not only against Pakistan, I think. It was the time when, I think for the first time, Bangladeshis who had given their lives for language began to feel that there was something there that they had to assert in literature, in the arts, in every possible form. And that, I think, gave the writing of our country an impetus and took it in a direction that would take us not very far away, but would take us a distance gradually over the years from the writing in Kolkata, the writing in West Bengal. And it seems to me that there are lots of things to be said. We have common ancestors, so Rabindranath, Jivananda Das, Nazrul, and Buddha Bose and others. But I would say that increasingly it seems to me that after 71, Bangladeshis began to write, and with book fairs, with the Ekushe Mela, with the Poila Boishak and so on, we developed our own traditions and our own generation of writers. So the Dhaka University products who began to write in the late 40s and 50s became the dominant poets. Till then, you would be looking forward to poetry magazine, and those of you who are in the audience, Desh and Ultarath and Jalsa, and those are the things that people in Bangladesh read, the middle class in Bangladesh read. But after 71, all that began to change. And now, Desh is almost a curiosity. I mean, I think the sale in Bangladesh is, well, it's not restricted at all. It's just that people aren't that interested in it at all, like they used to be. There was a time when I was growing up, we were reading Bonuful and Subodh Ghosh and of course Bibhutbhushan and the others, but the popular writers, Niranjan, we were reading them, and they seemed to be the only thing we wanted to read. But I think in the 70s that changed drastically. And by the 80s we had our first full-fledged writer who had such a broad appeal that Bangladeshis now wanted to read him and didn't want to read Indian the new generation of Bangladeshis, Humayun Ahmed, who outsold any other Bengali author. And he was the first. The little magazine scene developed. And so now, Hogbhai is very, I think he was perhaps thinking about himself. He has a readership in West Bengal, I'm sure, and some of our leading poets have readerships. But I would say that readership is quite restricted in West Bengal. And similarly, now the leading poets of West Bengal aren't that well known in Bangladesh at all. The leading novelists of West Bengal are not well known any longer. I think things have changed quite a bit. So while we have, the session is called One Language, Two Nations, I was wondering if, let's say, 30 years down the road, we might have another session called One Language, Two Literatures. We are moving further and further apart, and there are all kinds of other reasons. For example, it seems to me about 20 years ago, I saw on Dhaka television a discussion about the language of literature. And one of our professors, Professor Mustafa Nurul Islam, he was using that program, and he was talking about how Dhaka, because of the attraction it had for writers, intellectuals, for cultural people and television and so on, Dhaka's language would become gather a strength and a prominence that it had never had before. And not many years after that, there was a film made by one of our leading filmmakers now, and it's called Bachelor, and it used the language around Dhaka with such great power that soon television picked it up, and in television they began to use that language, the language around Dhaka, as the standard language. And now if West Bengal, people in West Bengal don't have access to our television channels while we have access to their channels. But if they did watch, they would find out that language experiment has gone a long way and has also moved us away as far as language is concerned also. So the language of the theater, the language of drama, Hogbhai has poems in dialect. He has plays in dialect that he has improvised. And so some of these experiments definitely are moving us away, but I don't think this is negative at all. When I'm saying all of this, I'm not saying that this is negative in any way. I think that it is bound to be. And Hogbhai talked about other literatures, and of course, inevitably, what comes out in New York will have a slant which is different from what comes out in London. And that is all for the good of literature. I mean, the New Yorker type of prose is quite unique, and nobody in London would want to write that. So I would like to end by saying the development is inevitable. We are moving somewhat away, and we're going to move further away. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's inevitable.
Still, that would be one thing. Can I add just one thing? Fakrul, you said that from 1971, the separate way.
No, I said I would say from 1952 onwards.
No, but 58 is the time when martial law was imposed by General Ayub Khan, and import of books were banned, import of films, Bengali films were banned, or not on. So it was a vacuum in which my generation of the 50s, we call ourselves the children of the language movement. My generation really started operating, finding ourselves really in an island almost, intellectual island. And we had to sort of join it with mainland, but with distinctive flora and fauna of the area. Thank you.
Thank you. As Fakrul Alam has pointed out about the Bangladeshi writers writing in Bengali and their situation in West Bengal. So I'd like to know from Subodh Sarkar that what do you think? Why the Bengali people are not liking, or do you think the Bangladeshi writers writing in Bengali are not becoming a part of the popular reading in West Bengal? And there is a point that the too much inclusion of Arabic and Farsi words into the literature, it's a problem. So often it is said, what do you think, sir?
Shall I use it or? Is it working?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
working.
thank you. So I think between Shamsul Haq and Fakrul Alam, I am the necessary evil, the Indian devil, and I am not a soothsayer. Both of them have spoken beautifully about the crisis of the language and the spread and development of the language during last 30 years or more than that. But I am going to begin with a statement that, you know, as Fakrul Alam has pointed out, that during last 30 years is a different chapter now. But in next 30 years, I believe we have to change this, the title of the session, you know, it is One Language, Two Countries. After 30 years, there will be a session on this stage when it will say, two languages, two countries. Calcutta is going to be a non-Bengali place. You don't see any Bengali in the city. You don't speak Bengali on Park Street, at Esplanade, at College Street, at Goriahat, at Jadavpur. It's a terrible situation that we are going through. And the next generation is going to lose their mother tongue. This is a very difficult situation now we are facing. You know that Sunil Gangopadhyay, who was the, who passed away very recently in 2014. We came down to the streets. We protested against the language crisis. And we took out rallies because in a way we stood at the center of the city that is called Esplanade. There, if you look around, you do not see any Bengali word. You see only Hindi words and English words. We entered, you know, the building of Grand Hotel, the great, great Grand Hotel from the time of the Raj. And they asked me, okay, fine, you have come. And you were asking me to put Bengalis. Okay, we'll do that. We never did it. Now the point is, this is one thing that is happening in Bengal, especially in Calcutta. Calcutta is going to be a difficult place for the Bengali writers. I mean, the Bengali writers, not Bangladeshi Bengali writers. This is really a difficult situation. But now the question is, as he was speaking about, it is a great dream for all of us. Tagore had this dream. He lived in this dream. But now the dream was there. The dream was successful. The dream came true. But during last 30 years, you know, just one example I'm giving you, a very strange thing has happened to both sides. You know, the books of Sunil Gangopadhyay, Samaresh Majumdar, and many others from India. So these books are exported, and they have the, I have seen with my own eyes on the streets of Dhaka, you find a lot of editions, pirated editions of Indian Bengali books. But we have never, ever any Bangladeshi book pirated in Calcutta. You know, you will be surprised to know, it's more than 15 years, 20 years before, there was one publisher in Calcutta, and you know, Humayun Ahmed, for example, he was immensely popular in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. You know, everybody knows he was a household name, and he was so rich by writing that he bought an island or something like that. This was reported in Calcutta. They will be able to tell you more precisely, I think. So what happened? This man, so when he came to Calcutta, and his books were 9 books at a time were published in this part of the Bangla, or in India, in Calcutta. So it was a flop. The Bangladeshis cannot imagine that his books can be flop. Huh?
I can.
You can, yeah. So the question is, there is a kind of ethnicity difference which is growing up. There is a kind of religious tension which is growing up. there is a sort of difference, not territorial, difference. We have the same clouds. The clouds of Dhaka sky take only 10 minutes to come to Calcutta to rain. We have the same birds, we have the same rivers, we have the same language, we have almost 95% similar things. But what has really happened? Even the popular singers of Calcutta, of Bengal, are not that much popular in Dhaka or in Bangladesh. So this is, and I just cite one example, because I know, that I think that Syed Shamsul Haq will be able to elaborate on this point. That I was invited to participate in a poetry reading in Cox's Bazar, right? So it was far away from Calcutta. Cox's Bazar, you understand, almost
Down
near,
south.
almost near Burma, near Myanmar. And what happened, there's a poem. I wrote this poem after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It is a dialogue. It's based on dialogue with my 3-year-old son. He was 3-year-old at that time when the Soviet collapsed. This poem is called Bhalo Jaigata Kothay. There is a line. Very interesting thing happened. There is a line. It says like this, that there was no boat, there was no mode of conveyance on Sunday, quote unquote Sunday. When I read out Sunday, it is very meaningful here, but it loses meaning in Bangladesh. Nobody could understand why did I write Sunday? Because they have no Sunday. They have Friday. They have Friday, it's, that's Jumma bar. So they could not understand the meaning of Sunday. A very simple, ordinary student came to me and asked me, what did you mean by Sunday? He is not responsible. He couldn't get it. The way my student understands the meaning of Sunday, any child can understand the meaning of Sunday, but they failed to understand. So, and this Sunday, this word is very important in this poem. So I missed it. And when the literature comes to us with, this is now why the Bangladeshi writers are not selling well.
I'll tell you
Maybe,
why.
maybe they are well known,
I'll
but
tell
they are
you
not selling well. Another point that I would like to raise, that like Chacha, okay, like Khala, there are so many words like that. The Bengali readers, who are basically Hindu readers, they are not acquainted. It's again and again.
There
it
you
is,
are,
It is
Subodh.
repeated. It's not a religious question. It's a linguistic question. So this linguistic difference that he has also spoken about, as Koushiki has also raised out this point, I think there are a lot of differences now. And his dream, my dream, Fakrul's dream, that there should be one Bangla, one culture, one ethnicity, this oneness we have, but still it is not there. And that's why, when I come to Bangladesh or he comes to Calcutta, so it's good that we have this exchange. Why should I have exchange? It should be natural. It's not the exchange between two languages. One language and one language. But the point is, now there is a very invisible divide, neither political, nor linguistic, nor religious, nor ethnicity centric, but it is something different. We have to address that space which would be newly created for the writers of the both sides. Thank you.
Our writers from Bangladesh has something more to say. I now request Syed Shamsul Haq.
Subodh, you have to go deeper into the problem. It is not a question of Sunday, the weekend here, and Friday weekend there.
No, I just cited one example. One example.
No, it is historical. In Bengal, not so much in the northern India. In Bengal, the Hindu community and the Muslim community, they kept apart. We tried. We are still trying. East Bengal, that it was, now Bangladesh. You go to the village, you will find that Hindus and Muslims, culturally, socially, they understand each other, they know each other, they follow each other, and the folk literature is same. It comes to a problematic area when writers like us are producing stuff. The problem not so much with poetry. Subodh is a poet. I also try to write some poetry. With poetry, it's easy. We work with symbols, images, metaphors, and we talk about inner map. But with fiction, the problem lies with the fiction, where Bangladeshi writers are writing about Muslim society, Muslim people, their problems, their particular way of living the life as it is. The population in West Bengal or in Tripura, they have no clue, really. They have no clue that what we are talking about. There is no demand. It's as simple as that. And it's the basic of economics, that there is no demand, no supply. And whenever I come to Delhi or in various northern Indian cities and meet writers and look at the literary scenario here, I really feel very happy that Abdul Bismillah is understood, read, and appreciated here, irrespective of Hindu or Muslim readers. But not there. Humayun Ahmed, who wrote extraordinary popular stories and novels, as we have heard from Subodh. He fell flat on the stone pavement in Kolkata because the Kolkata population or the West Bengal population, most of them, they have no clue what he is talking about, what the problem is about. And this alienness existed way back, long ago. It's not only 47, even before that. And you would notice, Subodh, and others who are familiar with Bengali literature, history of Bengali literature, that there has always been a weaker, thinner stream of so-called Islamic literature, meaning books and poems written by Muslim writers.
But what is your take on that issue?
Because we have to come together.
No, that Humayun Ahmed is not sold in Calcutta.
Because, the
Cultural portrayal.
life he is writing about is not familiar to West Bengal readers. That's it. And there is a psychological resistance. Subodh, I am very sorry to say this. I mentioned...
No, why should you be sorry? This is true.
I mentioned Abdul Bismillah and Ehtesham, Manjur Ehtesham, these two names I came across. I read some Hindi. I got a couple of books by them. And I was really very happy. And at the same time, I felt a great pain that our novels, fiction, are not read in West Bengal. Not that it's badly written, not that it is not worth its name, but because there is an alienness, as though, the writer is talking about a situation, a life, a society that is beyond their everyday comprehension. That's what I'm saying. It's very deep, historical. Bengal would not have been divided, Subodh, I tell you. Bengal would not have been divided if the Hindu intellectuals were more generous, the leaders of opinion were more generous,
Sure.
then Sharad Bose, Sohrawardi, and Abul Hashim's proposal of United Bengal would have succeeded.
I want to know from Fakrul Alam that he's talking about this alienness. That is actually true. Streams of thought always very powerful. One is that conservative and one is liberal in the writings of Bengal. Particularly, I'm talking about pre-partition Bengal. And where we have found the Muslim Sahitya Samaj, there is Purbo Pakistan Renaissance Society. The Bengali Muslim writers always searched for their identity. And they were asking for a kind of cultural autonomy. So I want to know, what is this autonomy they were asking for?
Well, go back to something you said about the use of some words in Bengali. I mean, so Muslim Bengalis would say pani, for example. Yeah. And so those words would come in naturally. And so when Nazrul wrote poems and he started using these words, there were objections. But there are always objections. There were objections against Jivanando because somebody satirized him for using words from East Bengal. I think these issues are very complicated. It has to do with the hegemony of Kolkata. It has to do with the hegemony of a kind of a Brahmanic, if I use the word very loosely, not in a religious sense, kind of sensibility at work, where languages, because all languages evolve, all languages take in new words, they are resisted. If I go back to Humayun Ahmed, I mean, I can't understand why he's not popular, because he's tremendously good writer. If you think of writing as something like Dickens, popular writing which just captures anybody's imagination.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand that, but I think there are all sorts of problems because, for example, the border is not as porous as he said, as Hagbhai said. Now there are actually, where I'm come from a place which once used to be known as Noakhali, and my father used to always take us and say, look, there's the border, and Amitabh Ghosh has something similar in Shadow Lines, and there was no border. But now when I go there, there is a border. So people don't cross so easily. Goods don't cross so easily. And these things are happening, I think, at an alarming rate, actually, if you think of a unified Bengali literature and unified Bengali sensibility. I think the question of distribution, I think our television plays are much better personally than the plays I watch on, that I don't watch, actually. When a channel switch, I come across in Star Jalsha and so on. But our plays are never broadcast there. And our plays are full of maybe one reason is that they use a lot of dialect. They're dialect based. And now not only the language around Dhaka, the other dialects come in regularly in the plays. So maybe just because of the border, because of the use of dialect, because of the use of new languages, because of policy, the media houses and so on, because a journal like Desh, which really was a bridge, is gone, because of a lot of other things, I think we're moving apart. In fact, I wanted to say this. I wanted to say that I'm a teacher of English literature. And so I specialized at one time in American literature, and I specialized at another time in 18th century English literature. And I think down the road, people are offering courses in Bangla literature. We'll be having one on West Bengali literature and another on Bangladeshi literature. And if Subodh is, what Subodh says is to be believed, and I agree with Subodh, because the first time I went to Calcutta and I went to a hotel in central Calcutta, I didn't hear Bangla being spoken at all. And this was many years ago, not now, Subodh. This
It's no more terrible.
Many years ago. So maybe the literature that is going to be dominant is our literature, as Bangladesh.
I want to know from Subodh Sarkar that don't you think that Bengali language is kind of enjoying a kind of literary hegemony over the other Indian languages? or the Bengali language and literature in West Bengal particularly, what I am talking to. They're not interested to take from others. They're not interested to learn from others. What do you think, sir?
I have already shocked Shamsul Haq very politely, but I understand that he is shocked. But I am going to shock you all this time because this question is really a very difficult question for an Indian writer, and especially writing in Bengali. I can be a soothsayer. Then I can say very beautiful things about what is really happening in Calcutta. But I tell you, there is no Bangladesh in Calcutta. There is no India in Calcutta. There is little bit of France. There is little bit of Russia.
Lot of England.
There is little bit of the Spanish world in Calcutta. The latest trend for last 25 years, I find some Jadavpur University students here who have come to Delhi. For example, Devait is sitting here. And Jadavpur University introduced Marquez 30 years before, even before Marquez got a Nobel Prize. More than 30 years, I think. So already it was there, the Spanish world, the Latin American literature, the French, the German, the Russian. So it was in the time of Buddhadev Boshu, who was a great translator of Meghdut and some Indian writers, and also great Russian literature of German poets, French poets, Latin American poets. So it was a great time of translation in the 40s. You know, I tell you that as early as in 1940, 47, 48, 49, Pablo Neruda ending with da. Most of the people, most of the Bengali household thought that Neruda is a Bengali poet because da is there. So every household recognized through Subhash Mukhopadhyay's Bengali translations, welcomed him not only because of da, but because of a lot of political things which were happening because of the communist movement at that time. The communists went underground, and Neruda became a voice for the Bengali intellectuals and Bengali intelligentsia, Bengali middle class. So this is, you know, that this is a very really interesting situation in Bengal, and that's why possibly Koushiki has pointed out the Bengali hegemony, the Bengali supremacy in India, which is now over, which is gone, but it was very much there, but still there is a spillover effect. Still, a Bengali reader, a Bengali poet is very insular. They are not bothered what is now written in Hindi. They are not interested to know. I have been editing a magazine called Bhashanagar, as from my biodata you came to know. So that I have been editing this magazine for 25 years, single-handedly with some youngsters. And it was so difficult for me to introduce a Kannada poet, a Malayali poet, a Hindi poet. I took 25 years just to say that they are also very good poets. You Bengali readers, please read them. It was very difficult. So in a way I find that the Bengali, you know, psychologically they were insular, and they thought that, no, there is no great literature in India. There is great literature in France, there is great literature in Russia, in Latin America, and that's all. So this is how I think that the Bengali intelligentsia, the Bengali middle class, the Bengali intellectuals, you know, how many copies are sold there? We have translations of great writers of India. There are some government agencies, some non-government agencies. They are also publishing Indian writers in Bengali translations. But how many copies are sold out? Sometimes they have good run, say about 1,000 copies. But these are meant for university lecturers, professors, scholars, those who are working on Indian literature, and working on Indian literature is now a fashion in the West because it comes under the package called South Asian package that sells very well abroad. You go to America, you go to Europe, this is the package. Every university has this package. And when you talk about the South Asian literature, you basically, you talk about Indian literature and little about Pakistani, about Sri Lanka, about blah, blah, blah. Bangladesh is very little, very little. So this is how, I think this is all criticism. This is the critical, even of my attitude and also my friends' attitude, my writer friends. They're not bothered at all. So this is not only because of the fact that the Bengalis are intellectually and psychologically insular, but I would also prefer to say that there are so many other reasons. We don't have time to discuss all these reasons, but I would like to say that this is happening for last 40 years. And there are some forces which are rather working for it. And there are some forces which they don't want, some elements they don't want to discuss Indian literature, you know, and they're tired sometimes. So this is how, you know, still in India, Calcutta possibly is the biggest market for English language books, but still it is happening. Even we don't entertain translations from Indian literature, neither in English, nor in Bangla, nor in any other language. So, but we have the solid, concrete reading community in Bengal. Still, you know, we have even some of the poets. Some of the poets, I can name at least 5 Bengali poets, quote unquote, Bengali poets, who sell very well. They run for 5, 6, 7, 8 editions, not a matter of joke. This is possibly the best, the highest rate in this book industry in India and also outside. So this is, you know, I said that I am not going to say this. These are the things which I think writers like me are facing, because we wanted to have one India, to have one literature, and a readership which would appreciate translations. This was a very, very important. Okay, there are some translations from Indian literature which sold enormously, like Godan, for example. It became almost a household name. Some writers were there who were very well known even before I was born. So the question is, now it's not the question of Bangladesh. The presence of Bangladesh in Calcutta is not, I'm not happy with it. Even the presence of India, I mean Indian literature, it's not noteworthy. So that is why I believe that I don't know about the future of Indian literature in Bangladesh. How many readers are there for Indian literature? I have no idea, but very, very, very little. But sometimes I feel in Calcutta that I am not living in India. 35 years ago, as a young writer, I was invited to Bhopal Bharat Bhavan. Ashok Bajpai, the renowned poet here, invited me as a young writer. I had a feeling in Bhopal that for the first time I came to know about Indian literature as a young writer, came back home, started this magazine called Bhashanagar to introduce Indian literature to my Bengali readers. But I don't think that I made it possible. The dream has not come true. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Actually, we are running short of time, so we have to finish your session at this moment. I think Syed Shamsul Haq, he wants to conclude.
What I want to say, that I started with, that the sessions have been very exciting for me. And I was glued to the session of talking about partition, of experience of partition. And I told
Any question?
Abdul Bismillah
Any question?
that the endeavor on the part of West Bengali readers that they are trying to understand our literature, read our books. Only a couple of months ago, I came across a small dictionary of words used specially in Bangladesh, published and collected, edited and published by Kolkata people. And this is a good sign. It really heartens us that there is a curiosity, if not an urge to understand, at least the curiosity is growing, and we will come. Yes, but also I must tell you one thing, that I find that the folk literature, there is no Hindu-Muslim barrier. There is no West Bengal, Bangladesh barrier. It's with, yeah, but yeah, but with, you know, our products, we find that the division is really, really very deep. Thank you.
We'll
Thank
have
you.
questions after the session. Thank you so much.